So today is Thursday. We're gonna look at Kotlin today and how to do multiple screens with Kotlin and look a little bit at setting up a larger app here. Um, I'm gonna try to work on this in kind of three stages today. First, I'm gonna go through a basic app or the basic code and that sort of stuff there and talk about that. Then we're going to try to use AI to generate a sample project with us and see how that goes and look at what the code that AI generated and see if it makes sense there. And then once we get that, we're going to start with a real basic app and build on it to make it more complex, add more features to it. And we'll see how far we get today with that today. And then that will hopefully lead you to a place where you can work on the assignment, which is again to do a code review of that code. So, or some section of that code today. So that's what we're going to look at. Posted this new, let's see, make sure these are visible. This new learning resource. And we're going to be using, so we talked about last class in Java, we often create multiple activities and you'll spin up another activity, but that is a cumbersome process. And so state of the art now in Kotlin is to use a single activity for your app and have multiple screens. And there's this navigation method for navigating around it. I would like to say that it's very simple and easy to use, but that would be a lie. It is somewhat complicated and not that easy to use, but it is the way they're using things now for this. So we're going to look at that. It is somewhat similar to what other apps or places use for things. So I think learning or seeing this, and if you've seen any other similar navigation stuff, it's common. A couple of things, goals of these apps is to, certainly be able to navigate, but also be able to go back. Some places will call this kind of a cookie crumb approach that you have an obviously back. So that if you go to some screen from another screen, you remember where you came from and you can go back that way rather than always going to, back from in some navigation back or a button will always go back to the home screen or something like that, but you may not get to a screen from the home screen directly. So there's this cookie crumbs where you keep the system keeps track of the screens you've gone through, and then you can just say back or pop off the current screen off the stack, and it'll get you back to the previous one for this. It involves setting up routes. So we set up routes to different hosts, to different screens. Our screens are just composable functions. So each screen is just a composable function to lay out the screen here. We define two special functions composable functions. A nav host, which defines our graph, and our nav controller. Now we're going to look at the code way of doing this. I believe they're introducing more GUI versions of setting this up. I'm just not familiar with those yet. So if you see those and want to try them out, you're certainly welcome to. But I think it's important to, even before you use those, understand what's underneath them here. So we have a nav host, which defines our navigation graph, all the possible routes. We have a data structure that defines the routes. And then we have a nav controller that kind of controls what the current screen is that we're showing for this. And so generally we create a home screen or some main screen, and the nav controller lives there, and it will then load in different screens on top of that one for this. And then we'll talk about data sharing. We'll start talking about sharing arguments, passing arguments back and forth. That gets rather complicated. And then we'll talk about a view model and setting up a view model and sharing a view model between screens for this. stuff. So we're going to look at start with a simple example here. And we're going to just look at a home screen, a settings screen, and an about screen for that. And so here's our main activity for this. Now, in this example, while you can set them up all actually in one file there, it is pretty common to have your screens in separate composables. If you remember, we can take any set of code, UI layout, put it in its own composable, and then move that composable function into its own file, its own class. All right, not even know its own class, its own file there. So we're going to have our main activity here. And again, it's going to have a nav host for this. And that is going to keep track to, load in the different screens when necessary. So here's our app nav host. It has a certain way. And again, one of the problems is that there's a lot of boilerplate code for this. So it creates the nav controller and sets that all up. And then you define your different screens. So we are defining a home screen, a settings screen, and an about screen. So these are our three screens that we're going to set up. Each of them has a route. And so up here are our routes. This kind of just gives us the names of these. And there's a lot of similarity to URLs. And I don't know how far I think are you in? Who's taking full stack right now? Yes. Okay. So in full stack, again, when you do navigation, you often start with the base URL, and you'll do start slash, the about screen is, my homepage, mypage.com/about or /settings there. And so that is what, again, this is kind of setting up is what is after the slash. And we will actually see some of that same sort of notation with routes here. So again, we define our routes and the names or the tags for each of our routes here. And then we define the actual composables that are going to show up here. And so like here, the setting screen is down here. It's just a composable. Here's our setting screen. It is just a scaffold with a box and some text that says this is the setting screen. And then we center it and pad it and stuff like that. But I mean, so basically a real simple setting screen here. So that's where up here, we're just saying, when you're going to this route, display this screen. When you're going to the about screen, when you're going to this about screen, use this composable. So again, similar, here's the about composable. And again, often your screens will be in separate files, but here I have them all together just so we can see them all together. And then the home screen. Now, the home screen is our starting screen. So we pass it the nav controller. So this is the, So we are creating a nav controller here and saying that our start destination is the home screen. So our home screen gets the nav controller passed to it, kind of as the start here. So again, this kind of layout is pretty common. If you wanted to add another route here, you would just duplicate these lines. If you want to use this another app, you just duplicate this. The route, this has to refer to the route that's your starting route. Here are your route names. Here are your whatever your screens are called, your composables are called, and yeah, whatever is the home one has to start with the nav controller there. So, and again, you also see when we start the home screen that it is past the nav controller here for us. So, why does it need a nav controller here? I would say, sorry, I misspoke. I'm kind of new to all this. I told you the nav controller needs to be passed in because it's the starting one. It's not. It has to be passed in because it has buttons that let you navigate to other places. So right now, the settings screen doesn't have a back button. You'll just have to hit the actual back button on your phone for that. If we wanted to put a back button there, we'd want to do this because what we do is we pass in the nav controller, and that lets us do things like navigate to a different route. We can have our nav controllers, they navigate to this route. So again, we have a button that says go to settings. On click, we use the nav controller to go to a different route here. If we say go to about button, we have that. So if we wanted a button, on the settings screen to go back to home, we would want to we'd want to duplicate that down here, and it would need a nav controller to do that. So you kind of see the basics of that. We define our routes, we create a nav controller, and we create a bunch of composable functions that for each screens. And again, the back button will work with automatically if we don't put in our own buttons. What is the on an Android? There is actually just a back button, usually at the bottom of the screen. Although nowadays it's often replaced by a swipe gesture. What is it on? Who has an iPhone? How do you go back on an iPhone?
There's a lot of the swipe gesturing
Okay.
in like the browser. They have one.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It's not like a built-in.
Not a built-in. Yeah. And Android, we're kind of losing that built-in because again, depending on the OS that's installed, like on my tablet, I old school, so I had changed the setting to have the three buttons, show up at the bottom of the screen. But otherwise, it is just a gesture now, and it works on all apps in Android. Okay. Okay. So that seemed really simple, didn't it? That didn't seem too bad. And Tom said it was going to be complicated. It's not. He lied. So, okay, let's say we want to have some arguments around. So let's look at it. And eventually we'll look at using view models to do this because the arguments are not the easiest thing in the world. So let's say we are going to add a new route, a new page for the profile. The user goes there. Right now, they'll just enter their profile name, their name, and we'll return that back to the home page and we'll display it there. So we've got to set that up. So we're going to take a past data back to the home screen from the new profile screen. So again, routes, we just add a new profile screen. That was easy. Composable, the nav host, we just say, okay, make a new composable. Here is the profile and here's the thing. We're going to need a nav controller for stuff. I said you only need it if you need buttons, but again, we will need it for other stuff actually. And then here's our home screen. Now, well, let's do our profile screen here. So here's our profile screen. And a lot of this is we're just creating a text field where you can enter the username here for this. It's an input. And on change, we're just saving it to an input variable. So up here, we have an input variable. Now, I should have made this one larger. If you remember, we had this live data stuff so that we declared variables that were live data. So when we changed them, another app or another part of our code could be observing it and would be told if they're changed. And that's what we're doing now. So variable input is not just like a string, it's a remembered savable thing, and we have a state. It starts empty. That's what its initial value is. So we have to declare it as a remember variable here in Kotlin. And then, so now when we click the back button, again, we have our nav controller because we already passed in the nav controller, and we can just go back here. Now, does this code make sense to you? Can you parse what that code does? So we're saying nav controller, that previous back entry, !dot save state handler, !dot set and username and input trim.
Isn't that like optional chaining?
Yeah,
Question mark?
right. So in Kotlin, if you have a question, if something can be null, we in some language you have to say if this is null or if it's not null, then you can go on here. A lot of languages now are building this in with a question mark. So, and again, we could put this all on one line. Let me just bring this. Oh, I don't have a file. So we could put this all on one line here. Um, because basically it's just chaining these things all together. And if we knew they weren't null, if we weren't worried about that, we would just do it like this, as one long text string here. We'd say nav controller, get the previous backstory entry. And what that does is like, basically the nav control has a stack, and we're just looking not at the top of the stack, but the previous item on the stack, which is the previous screen. So it's just go one down in your stack and get the previous screen there. So that's grabbing the previous screen, and we're grabbing the save state, and we're setting in that state, we're setting the username variable to our input variable, and we're just trimming it. Because in our code, we have an input variable, and we're setting that back here. So that is what this is doing here. And then in the home screen, this is where it gets a little complicated. We're using live data to remember that username, or have some live data named username. We're watching this save state here, and we're observing it so that when it's changed at all in our code, we are going to change our username variable to IT. So we have a username variable up here, which is a state variable, and when we change that, and that is what we're displaying on our screen here, is our username. Well, actually, we're checking, no, that's not it. That's checking if on the click button, we're checking if it's blank, we're doing this. Yeah, here. The code I bolded or made big. That's where we're saying welcome username and displaying it there. So that is getting a little more complicated there. And we're unfortunately going to use a different method for passing arguments to a screen here. And this gets so complicated. I just don't understand how all this works. So we are going to pass information from the home screen to the profile screen with an initial username there. So we're going to create a helper function to do that. We're going to create a pattern where we're going to set up this our profile. And basically what this is doing is, again, like in sometimes in web navigation, you'll see something, you'll have a URL created, which will be the URL slash like profile slash, and it'll say username equals, and then some text or something like that. The arguments will be passed in the URL that's being passed. And routes work similarly. We are actually creating them this way. And this is creating basically the base URL or path thing, and we're adding these initial arguments. And so it's basically just the profile slash and then the user's name as the parameter or the next value in the, I don't want to say URL because these are really profiles, but that's, if you've seen, or if you see it somewhere else, you'll see something like that or this. So we set up our routes that way. Our nav host, again, we used to just do this composable we specify a route and then the composable we have. So again, we set up our route, but we need a list of arguments here with our initial argument, and that's referring up here to this here. And then we are saying how we're setting this up, how we're passing this in here. And then so in our home screen, if we want to navigate with an argument, oops, I didn't make this bigger. Here's what we're going to have to do. So here's our on-click button. Our nav, we're going to navigate to our routes using this profile that we defined and passing in the user's name. So that profile will match this profile function here. We're given the username and then we're encoding it. All this actually, this little helper function does is like, we can't have spaces or white space in a route. So in the same way you can't have spaces in a URL there. So this just uses a function. It's actually a URL or URI function that'll encode the name. So if they type Tom Gibbons, what's passed in is Tom maybe underscore Gibbons. I think it's Tom %20 Gibbons or whatever the encoding is that we see all the time for encoding that name. So that's this function here. So we are calling that with our username and navigating to that route for this. So I have trouble getting this all set up and working with these routes and stuff. It just seems complicated to me. And I suppose it's one of those things where I think if I just worked on it enough, it will seem like second nature, but I just haven't worked with this enough. I'm still so used to, Java and just spinning up another activity and specifying that, and that's complicated, but I know how that works, and I don't know how this works so much there. But this, if I were you, I would focus more on this than on the old Java activity way of doing things for this. So let's try to use AI to help us out for this here. I'm going to, and I says you do the same thing. You have a couple options. You can start up an AI here. I'm going to start up ChatGPT and look at that. But we'll also use Gemini in Android Studio and talk about that here and see if we can work this out. Okay, so I'm going to create a new project. So again, I'm going to have you start from scratch here. We've been using GitHub and doing this. What I'm going to do is have this from scratch there, and you can still push it from GitHub. But again, you don't have to turn this in. This is just a learning activity, activity. And if you want to submit this portion of it, you can then just submit the URL to the GitHub once we push it there. But it's not in GitHub Classroom. So I'm going to do a new project. We're going to do this empty activity here because we're doing Kotlin. And I'm going to do an activity to track internships here in Kotlin. Okay. That looks good. Just call it Kotlin. I mean, and you can track. I would suggest you think of an app you might want to create that's going to maybe access data from an API, like a weather app or something like that. Or, I mean, you're welcome to follow along and do exactly as I say, but it might be good to try something else there, or pull data from some other areas here. I'm going to let this build a little bit because, again, it's only in project mode. It'll switch to the other mode soon. I'm going to look over here. There's the Gemini plugin. I'm going to again, where that is showing up, we're going to bring that up here. Now, a couple of things now. Again, I'm in 1.3 of it. If I look at my help, I'm with this is the most current version, Android Studio Narwhal 3 feature drop, 225.1.3. That's where I'm at. And so it has a little better AI. It has an Gemini where you can just ask questions, but also has an agent mode where it can modify your code directly for things. And it should have context here. It should see your whole project. You can actually select different versions. So like I often like to code in 2.5 Pro and do that, but Pro tends to be a paid version. Now use it. I don't know. We'll have to check. Let me know if you as a student can use Pro or not with this. I know as a student you can get like, you know, a year and a half of Pro free from Gemini. So we'll have to check with that. I tend to run out of credits when I use Pro. So I've been just switching it using the default mode, and it will select which one of these it should use depending on how complicated it is for this. Okay. But I'm going to start with ChatGPT. And because that's going to make me manually copy in the things. So I'm going to ask it, I am just learning Kotlin with Android. I am using Android Studio and want to create a simple app to demonstrate how to use multiple screens. So I want to make sure I tell it not to use the old way. So, but we're using, please use Jetpack or just Compose. The full name is Jetpack Compose if you want, with nav and a single activity. I want a home screen and an about screen. So I'm just going to start with 2 screens just so we can get the basics set up for this. Again, with the old ChatGPT, I used to have to switch it to different versions of it. Because especially when you're coding, the new ChatGPT 5 should automatically switch to more advanced versions if you're coding and stuff like that. So it's first going to tell me, make sure compose and navigation are enabled in our app. I'm going to skip that for now and see if Android Studio will do that automatically when I start putting this in. So far, I'm about 50-50 for when it does this stuff. I do run into problems where, like, if I were to take this code, a lot of the libraries here are old, so I know I don't want to just take this whole code and put it in generally my app because it's often out of date. Same with the manifest here, setup here. Okay, the main activities, create a nav host and 2 routes, home and about in your main activity. So let's look at my main activity. Here's my main activity. Here, I'm importing a bunch of stuff. Here's my main activity. I have my on create, and I have just a greeting here, and I have this is my composable for my greeting and a preview for that greeting there. So what are we doing here? We're defining our routes and our nav host. So I'm going to copy those in here for this. So in here, I'm going to actually get rid of all these and just leave my main activity in here and post those in for this. Now, we're going to need to do a bunch of imports for these. And again, here's the add dependencies. So it is saying, do you want to add dependencies and do your imports? So I want to add the dependencies. And that's why, again, I didn't do that in first thing. So it should have updated my Gradle, build.gradle script with those dependencies for this. Oh, it's not colored because usually it would be colored because it would have changed it, but I haven't enabled version control yet. So that's why it's not colored here. So, okay. Now I have to do some more imports here. Import that. Okay, now I'm gonna just leave that there. It's just a little confused, right? Oh, the other thing is up here, my on crate, I was just doing the greeting inside a scaffolding. Uh, I'm gonna want to change that. So let's see what it did. It has on crate set contents, and it has a theme here. I'm not gonna change. I'm gonna keep my same theme. It just does this nav controller and creates my app host. So I want to do that. So I'm going to leave my theme here. I'm going to leave my scaffolding there. I think I'm probably going to want to delete my scaffolding. But hey, well, I'm just going to put it in here. Yeah, I'm actually going to get rid of that scaffolding and just put it at inside the theme. Okay, I'm gonna let that be for a sec and create some of this because some of my problems right now is like this home screen, about screen. I haven't created those. So I'm going to go and do those here. So AI is saying, again, we want to create, and again, we want to put these in each screen in its own screen. Now, eventually, we would put probably those in their own folder, their own package, but I'm not going to do that yet. Here, I'm going to do it right here. So I'm going to create a new screens. Oh, it didn't put it. Oh, I put them both in one screen. I'm gonna have it. I'm gonna again. I don't like that having them both in one screen, so I'm gonna put it in separate screens. Here. So I want it to know what my package is. So I'm gonna tell it a little bit more background information here, which I probably should have done at the beginning. Okay, here is my main activity so far. So I want it to be seeing what my package name is and stuff. So can you, I want each screen in its own file. Can you set, show me that? So basically it should be going through and um, putting this in one file and the about screen in another file. So let's see if it does that. So, great idea. Yes, I'm so smart. So tidy things up. Oh yes, what? Wow, that's so nice of you to tell me that. So again, it is actually creating a routes app host, home screen, and a about screen stuff here and setting that up, which is actually how it is commonly done. I am going to leave the routes in the app host, I think, in the main activity there. Well, we'll see how it goes. So I want a home screen here. So I'm going to create a home screen class here. And now it knows my package, so I can actually take all that code, including the package. It sets up a nice preview for me, so I can view this and creates a nice home screen. I like that. So I'm actually, let's see if I leave that package. I'll get two of them. They look like they're both the same. That's good. So we have that home screen done here. And again, I can look through this. It sets up a scaffold, a column with some paddings, centering, center horizontal, sets up a text welcome there, lines at center, some spacer here, and then a button that says go to the about and stuff that. So that's a pretty simple about screen. Now it's going to set up we need to set up the about screen. So I'm going to create another screen for that. So the about screen is just going to have a top nav bar, a column with some alignment stuff, and then text. This is the about screen, navigation, yeah, about, and then aligned it. So, and it doesn't even have a back button here yet. So, okay, so that's our about screen. So now if we go back to the main activity, uh, we see the home screen and the nav screen should be happier now for these. I'm still not getting, I think, still don't have this import going. Oh, I see. Yeah, it wants that as a separate file. That's what it's wanting. I didn't think it set it up as a separate file up here. Okay. So I've been using this chat GPT was okay. I'm going to switch over and talk a little bit about Kotlin. I don't and Gemini here and how Gemini works and some of the limitations of it in here. Particularly it cannot create files in the current version here. So here I'm thinking, I should create a nav host file for this and define this. So I'm going to go over I'm going to leave it in agent mode. It should do this for me here. Can you look over the main activity? I'm not going to tell it. I'm going to have it first look it over, and then I think it'll tell me to create a nav host. We'll see how it goes. So. So it is suggesting we do some imports. I'm going to accept those changes here. So it should be adding some imports here. One thing I see often with this is that where some of this stuff has changed for this. So it's trying to import it this way, and that is not there. So let's look at that. So I'm going to look at the problems here. So yeah, we're getting unresolved host or unresolved compose. And again, it's looking at some older examples of where this is. So it's saying I might be missing a an extension. I don't think that is this case here. So okay, so it is now saying, yes, we need this navigation compose added to your build.gradle files. It is modifying this build.gradle file. And I actually find this very helpful because I hate working with these build.gradle files and getting all these libraries set up here. So I'm going to accept that. So it is going in here, going in implementation, and going to add this library for the navigation. So now when it does that, it has to resync, and that should clear out this error, but it gave us an error when we did that. So it should, now if I look back here to this, it originally told me some things to do here. It added some of this navigation libraries in the app level build.compose file for us and set things up there. I don't think we need to do anything in that one. So let's see how it's doing over here. So besides the build.gradle file, there's also this versions file. So there's this lib versions toml file. And again, often we need to specify what versions of everything, and we want to find compatible versions of everything in here. So it wants to add something to that. So I'm going to accept those changes here. So it should be adding and that should be doing another Gradle sync for this. There were times I spent like 2 hours trying to get the right versions of these different libraries in these systems. If it's something you'd like, there's a whole area of system development where when you have a large team doing developers, there is some people who are just help the developers with this set up this runtime stuff. So this is actually a whole thing for people. Okay, so let's see. I think lib.versions here. And so now I go back to my main activity. Everything is happy now for that. So now I have my nav host working and set up and running. I'm going to actually try this out on an app or a phone before I get too far in on things. So let's try this. Okay, let me mirror my phone. Um, I'm going to push this to GitHub because I want to track my changes and I want to be able to go back to this version. This is the basic version. Hopefully it works. So I'm going to push this to GitHub. Now, you should be able up here now, there should be a menu. Let me make this a little wider. It's called version control. You should be able to click on that and share the project on GitHub. And if you have your token set up in GitHub logged in with this, it should just you give it some name. Oops, yeah. So it should be logging me in to making sure I'm logged into GitHub here. So it's checking loading my account information with GitHub. So that'll take a sec here these days. And then I in GitHub I have to keep track of so many files. I like to put the project name there. I mean the class name here. This is the yeah, showing multiple screens in Kotlin. And then my initial commit. So this will be my basic working version with a about screen. And I'm just going to push all the files there. So that should go to good there. Okay, let's see. Did I ever get my screen up here? Okay, let's run this on my phone. Hopefully. Another thing that if you don't want to actually run it on the phone is you can just hit build and build will track down extra errors too. So if you click on the build menu here and just hit build, the little hammer, it will build, basically compile everything, right? And catch some errors too, even if you aren't running it there. Okay, and it does say that my project was shared on GitHub, so it's there. Now, one thing I like about that is as we change files here, they all change color, and new files will show up in one color, and edited files will show up another file. And so then, as things like as the building Gradle files or some of these other files are created or stuff, I can see it a little better for this. So now, what I really want to do is add a file here for a new activity for this and want to display that. So I'll do that. And again, one of the things we'll see, what I'm trying to illustrate is that this agent mode here can't create new files for us in the current system. Uh, there. Here's our app. It's so exciting. I can hit the About menu and display that, and I can go back to the home screen and go to About and go back. So, and again, you can look, it's nice to look at this and map that to the actual layout here. Here, there's a scaffold with a top bar that says home. That's up there. Title is home. There's a column. This is my column here. We're doing centering and some padding on it. There's text that says welcome to the home screen there. It's aligned centered. There's some space. This is that space here. And then a button that says go to about. Go to about is there. And it's a button. And when I click on that, it's calling about click here. And that is, where is that defined? That should be defined there to navigate to that. So, uh, okay. I'm going to try again, like I said, to create a what is that? Okay. Uh another screen and add another screen to this navigation stuff. And again, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna display a list of internships on my home screen in a list, and then when they click on one of them, show some details about that internship here. So I'm going to want to add that. So I'm going to be in agent mode and say, okay, now I want to add an internship detail screen that would show details about an internship. Or now, can you create a blank or add simple screen this in its own file and uh, open this from the home screen. So, all right. So it says, okay, great. I'll create the new file as a placeholder, composable. It'll be, internship detail screen content, and here's the content of it. And I'll create that file for you and accept changes. Accept changes. Do you want it added to Git? Add to Git. I just told you can't do that. I swear. I swear, this weekend, even on Tuesday, I tried to do this and it could not do this. So on here, but apparently I was wrong. Okay, so apparently it can now because it would tell you all this, and then it would create. It would not be able to create the file out there, and so you'd have to create an empty file, and it would do it, not do it for it. So okay, internship detail screen is created and displays stuff. Now, did it update? Okay, so now it's also going to update the routes, the main activity with the routes here for this stuff. So I'm going to say accept those changes too. And let's look at, so again, one thing I like is that, so it'll show green is a new file, blue is a file that's been changed. So I can know like it hasn't touched the about screen or home screen, which makes sense. It did update the main activity here and set that up. And I can see it is having some errors in here. So we're having two buttons here to about click and navigate to detail for this stuff. Um, and then we have our internship screen, which is again just a basic composable with scaffolding and a column and some text and a button to go back here for that. And so in our routes, we've added a detail route here for this. And we have our two composables, our home, about, and detail routes for this. Yeah, so why is this button not working? I'm gonna run build and see if it's actually a problem or not. I don't know. I think it's something not named right with the routes. Yeah, so it says there's a parameter between the home screen composable function and the app there. So we this is what we're calling here there, and this is what is here. So we can't find that. So let's go to the home screen and see what. So I think what it wants to do is pass the navigator to the home screen here from this main activity for this. So it's on the home screen, it's passing two things, uh, what to do. So again, um, so yeah, this is an interesting question. Like here in our home button, we said when we click on click, it just calls this function on about click. The question is, where is that function? And it's not defined here but it is passed into this function for this. If you get to software design, there's something called dependency injection, where in a lot of functions in the constructor, we'll pass in other objects or other functions that should be called by it. And that's what we're doing here. We're passing in the about click so that when we push click here, we'll do that stuff. Um, Now on the home screen here, we're also passing in this navigate one to do that, to update that. So I'm going to change my home screen to display a list of internships also for that. So I'm going to have it do that first, and then we'll update that because again, that what we'll do is we'll create in the main activity right now. Initially, what I'll do is I'll create a kind of hard-coded list of internships here, and eventually I want to move that into like a view model and then eventually into a database itself. So I'm going to work towards that here. So can you create or hard code a list of 5 internships with data about each? This would include the company, the job title, the pay rate, and a link to this thing. Want to start with a hard coded list and at first, please create an internship entity to hold the hold on internship. So I'm going to try to add some data to this here. I'm going to create a list of internships. To do that, I need an internship object for this. So it is going to create an internship entity object here. We're going to accept that. So it should add that. So here's our, and again, I'm using a standard process. What I often forget is like entities, actual database entities, add the entity on them or model. Sometimes they're added. So I'm calling this internship entity here, there. And then here's a list of internships. And it's going to add those to the main activity. Oh, it's actually adding them to a separate data file, which is okay. So. Now I want to display this list in on the home screen. Home screen using a lazy column. So what I like you to do is try to work through using your AI. Either use the agent mode here or use ChatGPT. One thing you can do, like with ChatGPT, is you can just upload a bunch of functions here. I often just upload 3 or 4 10 of my functions so it sees all that. Sometimes I've zipped up a function and passed it in here, but I find it a little easier to add just have it look at individual functions there and see if you can do something. And what I'd like you to do is try to do something like this where you are displaying a list of items. And then maybe if you click on one, we will display details on one of those. And I'm actually going to store this data, I think, in a view model in a sec, and then in a probably in a room database. And I'm going to work towards that. And again, I could ask AI to do it all at once. And towards the end of the semester, we will be working on that. But I like to have a little bit more control over it and see what it's doing and kind of do some checks for this. So I'm going to do it a little at a time here. So, okay, it says updated the home screen. So now the home screen's been updated for that. So now one thing you'll note is that when it updated the home screen with the internships, it also fixed that error with the navigation detail and added that. Because remember, my earlier error was that I needed 2 parameters from the main activity. I have to pass in my kind of 2 route, what to do when we click about and when we click the navigate to there. So it actually fixed that error when that's why I asked it to do this next step, because I figured it would look at the home screen and fix that error also. So it fixed that error here. And here's my scaffolding for displaying this stuff. So let's see now. I'm going to shut down the screen, but one thing, remember, we have these previews here. And what a preview means is that I can kind of get a live view of this data here of what it's going to look without having to run it on a screen there. So again, the preview should show your app here with this stuff. So it is trying to load that. I haven't used the preview much. Oh yeah, it needs a build. Okay. Yeah, because I've got an error somewhere. Let's go back here and see. Oops. No, I don't have an error. Let's rebuild. I think the last time I built it, it had an error. So again, since we're defining these preview views, you don't have to always run it on a phone. You should be able to just view it in a design mode here and do a quick view. So it'll show you in the editor what it should look like for this. So that's sometimes a nice way to preview. I mean, that's what it's designed to do, is show you a preview of what you're working on. So, okay, now I built it. I think now if I hit preview, it should show. So here it should be a list of elements. It's not actually showing, oh, there is. So there's all my data for that in my preview mode for that. So it's showing that. So now I want to then click on one of these one of these and go to the detail button for that. So I want to set that up next for this. So I'm going to, in my home screen, I want to say, okay. Okay, so again, I want to go to a specific internship to display it. It's going to need pass some information like what what the internship is, what ID for an internship is. So on the detail, we can display that. So it wants to modify this the navigation to pass that information. It's going to upgrade the whole screen, upgrade the detail screen to accept that parameter for that and do that. So it will hopefully do all that. So it's having trouble passing this information back and forth between this. It's trying to send the internship ID to the navigation here. And remember how complicated that was to set up often with these and with our routes here. We should be setting up this navigation here for this and is having some trouble getting that to work here. So let's see. I think it detected that error. And yeah, so it detected the error. The agent mode, when it tries to do a fix and it generates an error, it will try to fix that error and ask you to accept the changes to that. So it's fixed that now. Now let's see if I can build this. Okay, so now we're sending some detail to the internship detail screen here. We're calling this up. And again, we're just passing the one parameter to that. Now we're passing not just the on click, but the internship ID. So I should modify this to display this. And right now the internship ID detail form is not displaying any detail about an internship or reading that at all there. So this is the next thing is I have to add this internship ID to this internship detail form for this. So I'm going to do that. And I think agent mode is probably asking that already. So, okay. So now it wants to display information. Oh, no, that's the main screen, home screen. Yes. You've accepted those changes. Okay. Yeah, now it's not. Okay, I'm gonna ask it. Now, can you update the internship detail screen to display all the info for an internship that is sent from the home screen? So I'm going to tell it to update the internship detail screen here, and it should add that parameter to it so that it can then grab that and display details about that. So again, here's the new internship details thing, and so we're passing in the local context here, and we're passing in the internship ID screen for this. And then we're setting that up, which is what we want it to do. So here's the new detail form. And I think that will solve all of our build problems. So when you're learning stuff, you have to see how you want to use AI and stuff for this. What I would, I'm going to set this up, but it's going to generate a lot of code here that I don't understand, even me, because again, I haven't been doing Kotlin programming that long here. So once I get this kind of set up here, I'm going to want to go back and review all of this code here. And that's why I'm kind of asking you to do the same thing, is that, again, you can do it with either the Java or not, but I want you to record a walkthrough, pick some section of code that does something. So maybe, like to me, I would want to know, how do we go from the home screen? In the home screen, we're displaying these cards. I know how those work. And, for each internship, and I click on a card, and then it brings up this internship screen and passes information there. What does that do? How is that doing that? So I'd want to look at that section of code and make sure I kind of understand how that works here. So that would, and you can pick whatever code you want to look at, but you can look at it there. Now, again, it's hard to decide, how much of this you want to generate here. I find it best if I program enough so I kind of understand how this works. And to tell you, I just haven't enough in Kotlin. So that, oh yeah, that's a scaffold. I've used scaffolds a bunch of times. Columns, oh yeah, I know columns there. And this is a text, and this is a spacer, and this is how I would lay it out. I do a text, and I do a spacer, I do another text there. So this would be the company name from the internship here, and it would be medium sized there. And then I put a space in between each one. And, so I would look at this and it would make sense. I'd say that's how I would lay it out there. But to tell you, at this point, I haven't done enough Kotlin programming to do it. So what I'm doing is I'm having AI generate it, and then I'm going back and reviewing what AI does and see how it works. And at this point, I've seen maybe a dozen examples of scaffolds with columns, the top bar with the title, the text and stuff. So I've seen it a dozen times, and it's become very familiar to me, but again, it's not second nature to me yet for that. So you have to decide how you want to use it. Agent mode gets very dangerous because you can just start clicking accept, 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 and and it's kind of fun. Sometimes you should just do that and generate a bunch of stuff and see how it works. I sometimes like to then, go between these different AIs to ask them, or just take a break then and look at this code for this. Okay, so you can decide now. Well, let's just run this. How am I doing? The other thing is I like to push this to GitHub. So here's my code so far. and I can click on an internship and display information to it, and I can click the link and it'll go show me that link. Oh, it's making up these internships, so that doesn't work. But and I can go back, click on another internship and see that. So that's basically working now. So I'm going to update that. I'm going to push that. And well, first I'm going to commit everything. I'm going to update all my files and detail listing working. I'm going to commit and push that. It's going to tell me there are still warnings. I'm going to say I don't care about warnings. Commit anyway and push. Here's my push. So it should have committed everything out there. So now when I'm back here, everything is white again. Everything's been committed and pushed back there so I can track new changes. Now I want to actually go work towards, I don't know if you remember what we were looking at. Let me bring up what we looked at last week. No, let's go back to software architecture. I think that's where we were doing the room. No, I guess it was last week. So I've been mainly working in this main activity, and we've been adding lots of screens and filling in what I call the blue side, the UI side. I'm going to now flesh out this side. I'm going to do a view model and try to share a view model between these activities and store the list in the view model. In fact, I'm going to create a pizza repository, not a pizza, a repository here, and hard code the list in there initially and have that tied to a view model, and then have my screens use the view model for that. Eventually, I can move the view model to a local database, or we'll learn how to use cloud databases soon there. But I'm gonna have it set up so I have my view model and my pizza repository here also. So I'm gonna have it do that. I think I'm going to do it all in one shot because it's going to want to create a repository if it's creating a view model for this stuff. So let's do that next. To move to using a view model to hold my internship information. Can you create a this should use a new internship repository that will store the hard-coded list of internships for now. You create both the view model and the repo. So again, it could create a view model from the main activity. We have to instantiate that view model. And again, remember, one thing that's nice about that view model is it is, even when we switch screens or change state, the view model is kind of outside it. It's state aware as far as my app goes. So as long as my app is running and the different activities or different things are changing, the view model will be consistent there for this. Let's see how it thought about this. Okay, so it wants to create an internship repository. This is responsible for providing internship data. For now, we'll still use the hard-coded list. So it is still allowing me to do that, which is good. So it's going to create that. Here's the internship. And again, all it has is the list of values here for this, and then a get all internships and get internship by ID to getter functions that from that list. That looks good. I'll create this file node. It replaces the functionality of the previous internship data, which defines that. If that file still exists, you might want to remove it. And this is what I often see with AI. If you're not careful, it'll create a lot of new files and it'll not remove the old ones here. So we want to make sure the internship data we remove because I don't think it's going to do that here. So I'm going to accept those changes and add that to, I'm going to do that always. So again, it created this internship repository here. And now it's going to create the view model. I'm just going to say okay for that. Now it left this internship data, which is just this basically list of internships. We've moved that to the repo. So I'm going to make sure I delete that right now here. Because when I've done this before, I've gotten, especially when you're working with a bunch of developers who are all doing this, you start getting a lot of these orphan files. This summer is in a big project, and we probably had 50 code files out there, and there were probably at least a dozen, between a dozen to 20 of them that were just now orphan. They weren't being used anymore there. So there are some tools that help you identify those as you go. So, okay. Okay, now, so again, we've created that view model and we need to integrate that with our other code. We're going to do that. Oh yeah, so we're going to it's going to make a view model factory, and then the detail list can work with that for that. So let's see how that's doing. So again, I deleted these sample internships. Oh, it should be getting those from the repository. Sample internships are there. Okay, so what I'm seeing here probably is that on the home screen, I'm going to the internship repository and getting the sample internships here. But the sample internships are private. And instead, I have a get all internships, which is public. It should be using that. So I should be calling that here, not. Let's see if Gemini fixes that correctly or not. So again, it should be calling the public function get all internships rather than trying to access the internships directly, which is private. So let's ask Gemini about that. So again, it gives me some generic statements like maybe this or this or this, and it hasn't really looked at the code yet. Then it looks at the code and goes, oh, by the way, I looked at the code and it has internship and make sure that it's accessible. It looks like something like this here. So it is changing it to access that directly. So it's basically making it public. I don't want this. Can you change home screen so that it calls get all internships instead of trying access the private sample internships. 'Cause, 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 'c There are times like this where it would be faster for me just to fix it, but I'm often just curious to see if I can get AI to do this or not and stuff because I haven't worked with AI that much, so I'm just seeing uh it. Okay, and again, it often gives me some generic stuff here, but then it starts looking at the code and looks at this more and but again, it's getting lost in trying to edit this TOML file here of version stuff. I don't think I'm having any problems with versioning. So here, I'm just gonna not accept those changes. I don't know why it's even doing that. If we look at the like this and yeah, maybe that is with the new. Oh, yes, I've run into this problem before. So there's a special version of the view model that you need to use with Compose. So we were using the view model with Java, and that's a certain view. But if you're using Compose with the view model, you need a certain version of it. So it is wanting to update my libraries for this. I'm going to actually accept those changes because again, it wasn't finding those. And I've had a hard time finding a consistent thing, a consistent setup of view models with Compose. So hopefully it will find one there. So, and it should then be updating my build.gradle file with those. Let's see. Yeah. And it's resyncing. And it looks like it synced and got a working version the first time. So that's good. Okay. Now it should be calling, going back here. Is it going to fix this? So, yeah. Okay. Um, but I don't think it did it right. Oh, it's still private. Okay. Okay, so now I should be using this repository and a view model and storing things in that for this. I might want to test this out to see if it's still working. Make sure I'm compiling. But again, I'm still hard coding all of this in the repository. So now I can ask some things. Oh, I see, I'm getting, yeah, still getting this error here. So let's see if we can. Oh, it's still building. Let's see if it builds that correctly. I find sometimes it shows errors that are fixed as red while it's still building, and then eventually we'll clear them up. So we'll see. Sometimes it thinks it's good, and then when you build, it'll find new errors. So yeah. So it did. It still is not able to hand to get this internship stuff. Let's see if we ask Gemini now if it'll be happier. It's still trying to get this view model. So in our home screen, we don't have that, we're not getting the internship repository set up correctly, it looks like. Because again, this was hard coded before. So let's see if we can fix this. So, Okay, let's just try this. I was hoping to get as far as adding this to a room database in this class, but I'm still getting trouble. I've had this trouble before with this sort of stuff. Again, with integrating the view model within, I mean the view model with the compose functions and getting that set up well. I think we have the home screen working, but again, in the detail screen here, we're not getting that working correctly here. Where in the home screen we did what I had to do there. Yeah. Um, so yeah, we have this state information set up for that, but on the in home screen here, we're not getting there. So I'll work on this. And so for class now, what we want you to do is make sure you are working on for the learning activity, you should just post some version of your code here. So if you did the Java version, we had you do that in Classroom, so you can just do this now. On this one, we had you create your own repo from scratch here. So, and by default, it's probably private, which means I can't see it. So like if I go up into GitHub, oops. Not GitHub Classroom, but actual GitHub. And if I look at my repositories, here's my newest one, updated 20 minutes ago for this. But again, remember it says it's private. So if you want to share that with me, you've got to change, you click on it. And again, I see 2 commits so far with it, but it's still private. So under settings, you can do a couple of things. You can make it, you can add me as a collaborator, or you can make it public. And again, with a lot of your work in your own GitHub, you should be deciding what you want to make public, because often employers and people like that, especially if you list your GitHub on your resume, you want to then make some projects public, but maybe not everything public. You want to keep some stuff that you don't want others to see. So if you don't mind making this public, you can just go down to the very bottom, the danger zone, and change responsibility and say change, make this repository public. I've read, make it republic, positive. I have 2-factor authentication. It made me set that up at some point, so I have to enter my ID, my PIN code here, 048260. And now it'll be public here. So if I go back to my repository, it'll show it as public. The other option, if you don't want to make it public, you can add me as a collaborator. So under you can go to settings, collaborators. You can add people, and you can add T Gibbons -CSS. Well, okay. You're not going to find, I'm not going to find T Gibbons CSS because that's me, I guess. So I can't add myself, but that is my stuff. So you can add me as a collaborator. And then once you do that, either way, then you can submit this link for the learning activity that you did some. So either submit the Java version or submit whatever you worked on today here. And then record a walkthrough of some code. Sound good? All right. See you next week. Oh, what did they talk to you about the club thing? Right, okay. Yeah, okay. Okay. But you should come to my job. Yeah. Wednesday, Friday at okay, yeah. For like maybe Monday. Yeah. Okay. 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 Well, the tournament of color we worked on, I would say this year. Right, but any, right, yeah, an exercise or something, and my thought is like, yeah, if this, we should be looking at code that you generated or that AI generated, just so understand. So like, right, yes, that would be a good one. That would be a very good one. Yeah. 21, so are you because of this?
not too big. I mean, I guess what I'd also like you to do then is like, it has to tie in with another file. So this should work with the computer trivia file. And then, I mean, you can just, and that's pretty simple, so that gives you a whole bunch of lines, right? So, and you can just say, match it up with that. And, that's just such a, like, class that, you don't have to explain that too much. You gotta explain it a little bit, but that.
This one's like more general.
Right, yeah, yeah. Because like one is basically like a Java one file, and the other one is not.
Alright, so, okay.
So I get the Java two file.
Are all of these guys who separate all
I mean, you're just pulling data from them. I mean, are you worried about security issues or something? So I guess I would not be weird, but yeah, we're just pulling information. Right, yeah, perfect. So.
And then also, is there gonna be ways to that all?
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
I was just curious about
Right,
that.
yes.
Okay, so that'll be updated.
Right, that should be updated.
Okay.
I'll try. It
And
should
then
have been updated before.
Okay. And then my big one is,
Okay.
this is not looking for, so I think I don't need to go over that. Everybody can say that, like, access. So I haven't had any problems with public.
You still only have to do it fucking once. That's really weird.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. And then I had an explanation there for the 7 years, so I wanted to freaking do it.
Yes.
So yeah, I do the next side things where
Right, yeah.
So, yeah, so, awesome. Open little, do about the building, so, positive. Oh, no. Hopefully. That was pretty good.
Okay.
So that's like this one, or I won't let you do this process. So this one, the whole thing.
I mean, I found that you do have to do almost all of them. So I do the top and all of them. I tried to play. No, it doesn't. Oh,
This is when you put all of it.
oh, okay. Oh, interesting. That's yeah. That you're probably right. That's
But yeah,
that's a new way of doing it.
tried
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And memorize those random 47 characters.
But yeah, I also tried logging on. Oh, yeah, we're excited about those before, but
Right.
okay, cool. But yeah, I don't want to do like one. Access and huge. So I don't know if it's, I don't think it's open here. I don't think it's
So how did you great? So which project is this?
This one's for this week. Yeah, I think all I did was, I did treat, I took all this, and then set the stocks and things.
Yep.
That's about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so,
So what the files have already been probably committed locally, they just have to push up to give them, that's why it's not showing any change. If you've committed all, it's gonna push them. Yeah, so this is the assignment. The APIs.
I haven't had.
Yeah, that's really. You only have one GitHub? That's the other thing I think that somehow you're like. So if you go in the settings, Collaborator.
Yeah, that's what I think it came from too.
Right, yeah, right, yeah. That's right. Um. Um, the only thing I think of is somehow when that assignment was created, and, you know, something got messed up, but again, it should, you know, the fact that you are here, here, can you, yeah, so you've made a number of changes here, right? Can you just copy, let's go to that, yeah, copy that URL, and then let's create a new, clone that project again. If you move up.
Right. Sometimes that wouldn't have been-
Okay. If we had some name, add like. Button. There. I think you have to go to the end of the. Open it up. Well, yeah, let's just try to edit a file, really try to up, you know, push it and see. Let's let it go. Let's see if you can edit a file and then try, you know, one file, then push, you know, and I mean, and push, and if it, yeah, then just copy it over, because somehow that one, yeah, is not, something's not working right.
If I'm not able to, just like, put my code.
Yeah, it's public, you can just send it to me, so that
Like
works.
through email or something?
Yeah, just email, or when you submit in Brightspace, just post that, so. that would-
Like in a Google Doc.
Yes, right, yeah. Yes. Oops, I forgot to stop this, I think.